All right, good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to try something new here. I noticed that a lot of people don't have the initiative to sit around and read several paragraphs of writing to figure things out. So I wanted to start a little conversation, maybe try doing this in video form, talking about politics. What I've found in a lot of my travels around Oregon, going to protests and rallies, there's a lot of people out there right now that are fired up and they want to get involved, actively in changing our government and doing something to do that. What I've also found is a lot of people don't really understand basic civics and how our government works, going clear back to our founding and our Constitution. So I'm thinking about doing this as a regular thing. We'll see what kind of response I get out of it. I hope I can at least inspire some conversation and get people talking and actually thinking about how our government actually operates and what kind of things we can do to make change in that. So today I'll be sitting with Zippy the Freedom Monkey, and because we're going to try to make this so simple that even a monkey can understand it. You'll notice behind Zippy today, we've got what's known as the pine tree flag. Sometimes it's known as Locke's flag, in reference to John Locke, the British philosopher from the mid-1600s and early 1700s. John Locke was a big influence on many of our founders in writing the Constitution. His beliefs on freedom and liberty and how men should be governed was a big part of a lot of the founders, again, in the Constitution. So this is going to relate today a lot to activism. It's something that, more and more people are starting to get active, which I'm really happy for. Right off the bat, I want to talk about my biggest fear for 2020. My biggest fear is that we're not going to have a big red wave. My biggest fear is really that we are going to have a big red wave. Many people who are getting active in politics for the first time don't remember back to 2010 and the big Tea Party revolution. 2010 was a historic flip-flopping of the Congress. In fact, it had never been done in those numbers or really anything like it up till that point. Republicans came out en masse after Obama had rammed through national health care on us and really got fired up, really got active, got out there and voted. And again, we were able to flip the House. We did not quite flip the Senate, although we did increase the Republican seats by quite a few. I think it was maybe 7 to 9 seats that we kind of unexpectedly flipped in the Senate that year. And that left a lot of Republicans feeling giddy. I know a lot of us, including myself, felt like we had won the battle and yay, the fight was over. What a lot of us ended up coming away with was that while we may have won the battle, we kind of lost the war, because those very same Republicans that were swept into office on a conservative wave immediately kind of turned their backs on conservative principles. Immediately, we went to some of the largest budgets in history, absolutely zero fiscal responsibility, which was one of the big things we put in there. We did not get rid of Obamacare. And in fact, during the years, those last 6 years of Obama's term under Republican Congress, Obamacare really kind of mushroomed and expanded. So in the end, for those of you that were Tea Partiers and for those of you that weren't, there's a lot of bitterness that's still held amongst many of us over that kind of failure as what we hoped was going to be a conservative revolution. Instead, it simply turned into a Republican revolution, which, to be quite honest, has kind of led us to the point we are today. I think it's a big factor in why Donald Trump was elected. I know Donald Trump was elected as a Republican, but even if you go back to 2016 and listen to a lot of the pundits, Donald Trump was never really considered a Republican. And in fact, many people at that time wouldn't vote for him because they didn't trust him as a Republican. So that's what I kind of want to talk about, is activism and how we apply all that. First of all, I would like to kind of talk about the pine tree flag. For those of you that don't know, and that's probably a lot of you will realize, the pine tree flag is a revolutionary flag. It was actually the flag that George Washington flew over his first fleet of battleships, which I think was 6, if memory serves me right. And it was adopted later by Massachusetts and flew a lot of times in its militia and over some of its navy as well. The pine tree flag's kind of known for the slogan, an appeal to heaven. Where an appeal to heaven comes from, that statement, it actually goes again to John Locke, the British philosopher on politics. And John Locke's feeling was that we as human beings are given God-given inalienable rights. That's a concept a lot of us are familiar with. I don't know that it's a concept that a lot of us really follow, maybe and or take to heart. But Locke's belief was that when your government, and whether that be church related, which the Catholic Church was an overbearing force back in Britain during those days, and it was one of the reasons that led to a lot of the religious freedom discussion that went into the Constitution. But whether it's a religious body, a political body, there comes a time generally in tyrannical ruling where people have been pushed to the point where their only thing left to do is appeal to heaven. Now, a lot of people might hear that and they might think that's just a matter of sitting in your church and praying, but that's far from what Locke meant. What Locke meant is once you're pushed to that edge of losing your rights, of failure and or tyrannical behavior by your government, the appeal to heaven is actually an appeal to justify and give righteousness and victory in your actions. It's actually a call to direct action. When things such as voting or rallies or protests or debates, whatever the structure is of your political system at that time, when those things come to a head to where the people just can't achieve their means as far as freedom and liberty, the last thing they can do is direct action, which in the revolution with our founders against the British actually meant civil war or actually outright war with a monarchy, bloodshed in the streets. It's something I feel like we're very close to today. I know a lot of people talk about civil war in this country right now. I want to focus a little bit more on activism and, again, mostly peaceful activism, but not the kind of activism I've been seeing so much of, lately. Waving a flag on street corners and on flag overpasses, that's all a great activity. And I especially think that's a great activity to get people out of their houses who have really never done anything before. Again, that's 99% of this country has never done anything politically active. So I don't want anybody to take this in the wrong way. If you're organizing flag waves, if that's your thing and you want to do it and you're good at it, by all means, continue to do that. I'm not going to try to put that down at all. But what I do want to reference is kind of the old political adage, again, that came out of the Revolution. I can't remember which founder, it might have been Thomas Jefferson, that said, when politicians fear the people, you have liberty. When people fear the politicians, you have tyranny. And I think that's an important statement to make because I don't think any of these kind of kumbaya, let's all go wave and clap our hands and have fun type of flag waves, I don't think that installs a lot of fear in anybody. I think politicians don't even recognize that kind of thing. So what I want to talk about is getting more into the politicians' faces. Now, on normal times, that would mean going to city council buildings. What I would like to see is more activities out in front of media outlets. And certainly we're going to need to challenge the education system and the people in charge of that. So again, rallies in front of school district buildings, maybe in front of schools themselves. Again, this is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable and uneasy because I am going to talk about direct action today. I'm not ready to pull out my musket quite yet, but I'm going to tell you something, folks. I'm not far off, and I hope there's others out there that feel the same way, because I do believe our republic, as we know it, as it was founded, is on a precipice right now. We are about 1 or 2 steps from going off the edge into straight up fascist totalitarianism. So you can call it communism, socialism, fascism, whatever, but I think right now in this country, it's just straight up totalitarianism is what we're looking at. And if more people don't get ready to get into that direct kind of action, I don't think within 5 years we will have any freedom left in this country. I think we'll be working in the jobs that are assigned to us, standing in the spots in the breadline that we are assigned to stand in, and so forth. I think you get where I'm coming from. So one of the things, I want to do these talks, and we'll get more into two-party politics and what a trap I believe that's come. But today I just want to try to encourage people to not just get more active right now, but again, my biggest fear with the big red wave in 2020 is we're going to vote in a bunch of Republicans, and a lot of so-called conservatives are just going to go back to sitting on their couches, watching TV, sitting inside behind their church doors, doing their thing there. And I'm not knocking that, but that's not going to lead to any positive change in this country. We need to now start to instill some fear into our politicians, just as the leftists, BLM, Antifa, the military wings of the Democrat Party, KKK, have been doing for decades, okay? Maybe centuries at this point. We need to start to make those politicians respect us in that same way. And I don't believe we're going to do that all giggling and laughing, waving flags on overpasses. We're going to have to get in their faces. So as uncomfortable as that may sound, I think it's something people need to start to think about. A lot of people, maybe you've been to a couple flag waves now, you're getting more comfortable getting out and doing things. My name's out there. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you can see that. I really am trying to get a group together that, again, wants to be directly active, not just through the election, but after. Again, we've got to go after our media, we've got to go after our education system, and we've got to go after our politicians directly right now. Namely, Mike Schmidt, the DA in Multnomah County, that continues to let these terrorists go time after time. You listen to anybody in law enforcement in Portland, and they'll tell you that's why they don't even try over there anymore, is why go risk their lives to arrest somebody if he's just going to be out the next day. Again, it's going to be a long conversation if I keep going, but the guy that shot Jay Danielson had been already released on pulling a gun on people in a crowd. There was another guy that had stabbed some people. Again, he'd been threatening to stab in and out of jail twice, no bail, released the next morning, basically brandishing and threatening to stab people. So he finally did it. I believe he's in jail now. I don't know for sure. This was really at the start of the protests in about June. But so anyway, that's the kind of things I really want to get into, and it's going to be more focused after the election. And I'm hoping by maybe getting some of these video out, getting my name out a little bit right now, people can contact me that are really into it. I know that once our society gets back to normal, a lot of conservatives will go back to their jobs and be stuck up and kind of caught up in life. And that's always the case. But I've seen a lot of people out, they're either retired or they're part-time or their job just offers some flexibility. And that's the 1% of people I really want to reach out to get a hold of me or anybody else, or do it yourself. But we've got to start organizing and getting some rallies together, again, that are out in front of media outlets, that are out in front of school district buildings, and that are in politicians' face. Okay, we can't continue to sit in the background and kind of do this as a party, as something that's just, yay, fun, all right. I understand these flag waves and whatnot. They give people a lot of warm fuzzies inside. And again, it does draw people into the movement. So I want to just make sure people aren't misunderstand what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with doing those. I'm just hoping to get some people to take that next step of getting out into people's faces and really putting some fear into our politicians and the leaders of our society, media and education specifically. So that's what Locke's flag is all about. Again, the appeal to heaven wasn't necessarily sitting around and praying for God to help us. It was an appeal to heaven and to God for our acts to be righteous and for the results to be righteous. Okay, Locke was definitely in that regard expected for action and expected for victory. So that's my appeal to heaven right now, is just to get more people that want to get directly involved, directly protesting individuals and organizations that are responsible. I've been really involved in these protests and counter protests against BLM and Antifa for the last 3 months. And one thing I've noticed is we're out there in the street yelling and screaming at each other from across the street, or sometimes bumping chests. I know there's a real movement to get all dressed up in your military gear and go out and look cool and all that. But that's not accomplishing anything. Those kids and homeless people that we're yelling and screaming at in the streets, they don't set policy and they don't enforce policy. Okay? They're really the pawns. And so, yeah, we can sit out there and we can do that. And I know that is, again, a good first step for people, but that's not going to lead to any change in this country. I've noticed that it hasn't led to any change in this state. So rather than kind of bang our heads against the wall dealing with BLM and Antifa in the streets, what I'd like to see is kind of more effective ways of protesting, rallying, again, taking direct action to influence our political leaders. So hopefully you got a little something out of this, and if nothing else, I hope people will see my name. Contact me, comment me, leave suggestions. I'm all for that. I know that there's a lot of mothers out there that have been talking about, how bad schools suck, how bad they want to do something. Not everybody can homeschool their kids. That's not an option, whether it's because of working time or just because it's not your aptitude. I don't think anything needs to be frowned on about that. But homeschooling is just not a viable option for a lot of Americans. So what we do need to do is get into our politicians' faces about school choice. Okay, Oregon's one of the worst states in the union for that. And most of the liberal communist states are. Okay, they don't want any school choice. They want every kid locked into the public indoctrination system. And I've noticed, especially again in my travels to Portland and dealing with some more low-income people and whatnot, education, that's the worst thing. They have no choice. There's no way that they can afford to send their kids to a charter school or a private school. So one of the big things going forward long-term for our future, and maybe even nearer term, is to really change the way our especially publicly funded education system, both K through 12 and universities, are operating. I mean, that's a big deal. So some of you moms that are really concerned about that, that's what I'm talking about. You're not going to change anything talking about it on the internet or on Facebook, all right? We're going to need to get out in front of school district buildings. We may need to block a street or two, all right? We may need to take more direct action than just kind of waving some signs and laughing and giggling and hugging each other going home that night. But if we truly want change, then we're going to have to make an appeal to heaven, and we're going to have to get it done ourselves. So God bless everybody. I hope you got a little bit out of this. It definitely went longer than I thought. Hopefully most people made it to the end. Those that didn't, I can't really count on to be very active anyway. So get out there, do something, and don't forget, the war's not over after November 3rd, okay? That's just the first shot. We need to stay in the fight until it's over, until we achieve some of the results politically we want as conservatives. God bless. Take care, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you in the streets.